It's
All
Monday.
right.
It's the podcast. I'm Bob McCowan, along with John Shannon, as per usual, as we get the week started. And we are thrilled to have as our guest today the owner of the Ottawa Senators, EUGENE MELNYK, joins us from the cottage, not in Barbados, but pining for some sunshine and warmer weather. Huh?
Yes, I'm here in Barrie, Ontario.
Well, we're glad to have you with us, wherever you're from. We're all someplace different. John, before we started, EUGENE, John raised a really interesting point with your history in the pharmaceutical business, your BioVale days. We thought it might be appropriate to just chat a little bit about you, or with you, about a vaccine and process and how difficult it is to do all this stuff. And we got a few questions about it. Give me based on your background, are you surprised it took this long to get to where we are, first of all?
As far as the development of a vaccine,
Yeah.
you're going to get depressed after I tell you. But I think, look, I have a lot of experience in the area. I actually do. It's one of the things I can tell you that I actually know something about. The problem with I actually owned at one point for a very short time a vaccine company. And it's a horrible business. It's a tough business, very tough. That's why I didn't stay in it. The problem with, I said it as soon as people started talking about the vaccine, about a potential vaccine to solve all of our problems. I immediately said to people, look, don't bank on that. It's going to be so difficult to make a vaccine for this. And it's generally tough to make a vaccine, or develop one. But the biggest problem I saw was to try to develop, it's easy, it's not easy, but they can develop one on a lab bench. So, you got a bunch of scientists, 20 of them sitting around with the little things and the mixers and this and that, and they're making stuff, they're trying stuff, they're researching. And they can come up with a half a quart of a vaccine.
Right.
You know what? We have to get it up to 100,000 units because that's the FDA standard. The FDA can waive that for you. Okay, but that's what's considered a clinical batch, is 100,000 units. And let's say they waive that, but then what you got to do is you have to try to create mass production of this. And that's where I said, forget about all these little companies that say, oh, we got a vaccine. No, you don't. You have nothing. You have something on the lab that you cooked up that may work or may not. The biggest problem is scaling up to billions and billions of units. And I don't know where you guys, John and Bob, think you are in the lineup to get a vaccine. I don't think you're far ahead of me or far behind me, but we're not in the lineup. Think about it. Why should we be near the front?
EUGENE, I took a number, EUGENE. It didn't work.
Yeah, 1,655,322.
That's right.
But the big problem, it's very, very difficult. I don't think there's something coming in anytime soon. I really don't. Forget about this Pfizer thing. Okay, Pfizer's product, you have to carry it around in minus 70 degrees Celsius container. That's scale up problems. Where are you going to ship 6 billion? You got to make 6 billion units. Unit 1 and unit 3 billion and unit 6 billion all have to be identical. And I've given this analogy about omelets or pancakes. It doesn't matter what you're cooking up. They have to be identical. And that is where the difficulty is in vaccines. You cannot scale up to the quantities you want. And then on top of that, we can get 6 million people vaccinated in this country against the flu.
Right.
Out of what, 40 million, 35, whatever our number is in Canada these days. Good luck trying to get 6 billion people vaccinated. And if you don't get everyone, you got people running around. Some people have it, some people don't. How do you know? How you don't know? It's still uncontrollable. So I've got dark views on the success of a vaccine anytime soon. Will it come eventually? Absolutely. The smart people are on this, and I know people that are really close to this and working on it. I think the better solution is testing. And we've all created, unbeknownst to us, but everybody's created their little bubbles of people they trust.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Come in, you can sit with me, you can do whatever you want. I trust that you being very safe. Like I'm one of those. I can't get, if I get COVID, look out, I'm in trouble because of my immunosuppression.
Sure.
My liver transplant. So I got complications. But so I'm very, very, very cognizant of the fact that I can't get near somebody, or I get tested all the time. I come and visit my mother up here in Barrie, and I have to get tested before I come up because she's 87. In any event, I think that for sports, what's going to be important, I think, is initially the testing and the distancing. And if you can have people tested and then identified as being tested negatively, of course, then I think you could have a distanced attendance. And I think everybody has, who owns a stadium or has a team has done the math and has worked. We at the Senators months ago had this done. 4 months ago, we already had every seat pinpointed in our arena of how we would distance everyone. And it's basically, you allow 6, which is about 2 seats between each other, 1 row in front, 1 row behind. And you're pretty much distanced. Now, best way to do it, take a hockey stick and see if you can poke the person, right? That's 6 feet.
Your arena actually might be better than most, Eugene, because you have so many private boxes.
Yeah, that's right. That's coming back to help us now. Yeah, because we can distance, and not only that, but it's the bubble idea. The fact is, if you had a box, you're going to invite people, only people that you kind of trust, that not going to walk around and spewing and spitting and everything else. I hope not. Other than if you get Bob in there, you never know. But I'm kidding. But seriously, it's so I think the first thing that has to happen is testing, and I'm working on that as well. And I'm actually in a very, very advanced stages of getting the rights to, I'm hoping, to Canada and to sports in general of a rapid test, because that's going to be very, very key to being able to get people into your buildings.
I don't want to get too technical, but here's one of the things that we know. The flu has been around since the beginning of time. We have a vaccine. It is somewhat effective. It's not 100% effective, but it's somewhat effective.
Right.
And yet, you get your flu shot, you got to get it every year. Your immune system does not allow you to maintain that immunity indefinitely, or there's a different strain. There are many hundreds, maybe thousands of strains of it. One of the things that I've seen and heard, and I don't know how much you know about this, Eugene, but is that even if this Pfizer vaccine is valid, they don't know how long it's going to last. And some doctors have said it might be 4 months. Tell me about that problem.
It's too early. I mean, you and I could sit here for an afternoon and I can tell you all the problems. So, but generally, yes, you don't know how long. You don't know the long-term side effects of it. You don't. You're injecting yourself with stuff that they've only had 4 months, 3 months of experience with.
Exactly.
Even though Pfizer's a big, big company, and I've done business with them before, they're huge, and they're one of the. If there was ever a company, there's about 3 companies I would pinpoint as saying, "Hey, they could do it." Pfizer would be one. GSK would be another one, and Astra would be the third. So the 2 out of the 3 players are big into it. I don't know what GSK Glaxo is going to do in it, but I can tell you that there's a lot of ifs about it. It's not something I would bank on. I would bank on saying, you know what, we're not going to have 18,000 people in seats anymore, not for at least a few years, a couple of years. But we could get to 6,000, 7,000, and it's just the economics are going to start changing. If we get there to a vaccine, though, that is acceptable, then you know what? It's going to take a little bit of time to introduce that to people and to get them actually inoculated. Because you got to inoculate all of these people, and it's just it's not easy to do. And
Eugene, we can't get them. We can't get them to wear masks.
I know.
I mean, let alone get an inoculation. Come on, that's.
I know. I keep thinking to myself, how are we getting these, like, who's getting infected? You know, there's like 1,500 people yesterday or the day before, 1,500 before that. What are these people thinking? And it's much more serious than people give credit to. You got to have your listeners to read up on something called long haulers. These are the people that what the long-term effects of COVID is. Forget about the fact you get a flu. A lot of young kids think, that doesn't matter. It's going to be, so I'm sick for a few days. I'm not going to give up my social life. That's what's happening at the universities. But the long term, just read some articles. Wall Street Journal had a great article a week ago about the long term effect of people, and it's pretty. I can send it to you. It's pretty serious stuff, and that's what's more worrisome. But I think at the end of the day, science will prevail. That's the good news. They will get it. We'll get this right. It's long. I think it's going to take longer than people think it's going to be.
Well, the long-term effects is really intriguing, and I think I may have mentioned this earlier on the podcast some time ago in a previous episode, but I have a very good friend, lives in Southern California, south of LA, healthy, early 50s, exercises all the time, got it, and 11 weeks later, he still couldn't walk up the stairs.
Yeah.
And the doctor said he will have the effects of this the rest of his life.
No way.
Yeah. Said that and to this day, he's not 100%. Now, obviously, he's a lot better.
Yeah.
And he's functioning, but the impact to his system and his body is forever.
Kicks the hell out of you. It's apparently it's I'm kind of knowledgeable about things like dengue fever, because in Barbados it's something, everybody knows somebody that's had dengue. I think that at this point they've said that compared to COVID, dengue it's horrible. It's a horrible sickness. If you get it for a week, you can get encephalitis, your brain expands. I mean, my God. But they say COVID's worse. And I hope God, knock on wood, that I never get close to it.
So that begs the question. You're the owner of one of those 31 teams that Canadians love to watch. How realistic is a hockey season then? You don't sound very optimistic based on what you're thinking.
It'd be depressing when it comes to COVID vaccines, but no, I'm very optimistic about hockey.
Okay.
Go back and play. I think it's very real. I think there's no question, if you even listen to the comments of Gary Bettman publicly. I mean, we're full steam ahead to get it done. However, there's a lot of stuff that has to get done financially, and because everybody's taking a big hit. So there, on the one hand, there's no guarantee that this is going to happen. I know that the NHL is working very hard to try to make it happen. Let me tell you, I was on that call, and all the different options that they have, you got 31 different interests. Many are aligned, many are not aligned. You throw the government in there on top of that, regulations on top of that, medicine on top of that, and you almost need an algorithm to figure out what actually will work here. Because you have some people that have stadiums that they don't own, but every time they open the door up, there's a check, a big check has to be written to whoever owns the stadium, right? So it's almost to them and others that sit there and say, hey, I'm better off not playing. I'm ahead financially not playing.
Sure.
Guys like me, on the other hand, we own the stadium, we own the team, and it's on us. We don't have the obstacles that some others do. So there are so many moving parts. And I can't start to even tell you, who is involved other than the players, the union, of course, and the stadium people. But it's very complex.
Well, when you consider you have public health groups in the United States at the county level, at the city level,
Yep.
I mean, let's face it. If you remember back in March, Eugene, it was Santa Clara County.
I know
where the Sharks play, and the Sharks are one of those teams that don't own their own building, and So those are interesting other aspects and other variables that Gary and Bill and you owners and the players have to deal with.
Yeah, it's all those other interests that everybody wants. The good news is everybody wants the same thing. Everybody wants to play. They wish they could turn the clock back to January and get on with it. The reality is a little different, and then we have to deal with this thing. And it's no longer a joke. It's not a joke. It's no longer, I think, a temporary thing that we just sit and say, okay, this will go away. It's not. You got to deal with it. It's not going to go away.
There's many aspects to this, but I'm intrigued by this one, which is fairly recent. I saw an article just a few days ago. The Toronto Raptors still have some level of optimism about the borders being opened up so that NBA teams can come to Toronto and the Raptors can play at home.
Right.
We, of course, saw the Blue Jays have to play in Buffalo last year. The Raptors have alternatives. But the first thing that occurred to me is if the government decides to allow the NBA to have their players travel across the border, that opens Pandora's box, because then you cannot prohibit the NHL, you cannot prohibit Major League Baseball from coming across the borders. You're nodding, so I assume you concur with that assessment.
I do. And that's one of the variables. There's also that to deal with. I've heard the same thing. Nothing's firm right now, because we did have a big meeting and all the options were kind of laid out. We were asked to do some homework and make submissions on our every local issue that we have. It's about 10 questions that Gary needs the responses. They're going to gather all that up and start churning through it. But yeah, we need to have, I think by Friday of next week, I think there's going to be some answers to that. But the alternative is they've talked about a Canadian division.
I was going to ask you about that. Do you like that idea? No.
I don't.
I get it.
No. Only why. I'll tell you why. It's a hockey reason. No, seriously. I think that this is not our year. I think we'll be competitive, but this is the year that the Canadian teams are all better. Every one of them.
Including your team.
Including mine. But I'm still at the beginning of my rise up. Everybody else was good, and they're getting better. So I got to go up my young kids. So we have to kind of work on a strategy of how we're going to deal with it. Because we've got a bunch of young guys, and they're still growing, and we want to be competitive. We want to be a playoff team this year.
But what's the alternative, Eugene? Like, if you don't do a Canadian division and you can't travel across the border, the option that the Toronto Blue Jays took was Buffalo. The option the Toronto Raptors apparently have is Tampa Bay.
You can't do that with seven teams. You can't move seven. You can move one.
Well, my point exactly.
You know.
My point exactly. So
I don't
know what else you do.
I may not like it, but that's a concession we have to do. I mean, nobody wins here. There's no winner out of this pandemic. So it's one of the things that we would have to give up. You're going to give up potentially attendance to at least the early games. You're going to have to give up playing. Look, from a hockey point of view, I think it's exciting. You're going to really figure out, we would be playing a lot of Montreal and Toronto, and Winnipeg. That's fine. We will play the other Canadian teams. That's fine. But it's just from a pure hockey point of view, it's a tough division. Mm-hmm. It is. We don't get to play the weaker teams. They're all good, which is good for Canada. It's great that, maybe this is the year that a Canadian team gets there and wins.
So you said earlier that there are some owners that say, listen, I'm going to lose less if I don't play at all.
Right.
Is that still a possibility, that there is no season?
Anything's possible. You know what? I don't control that. I'm one of 31 votes. So, but, I think Gary and everyone is so totally focused on getting it done. But you need everybody to sit and step up. And there's stakeholders out there that aren't being as, I think, as cooperative as need to be. I don't know exactly who they are. We know they exist, and he's dealing with it. Luckily, it's his job, not mine. But uh, everybody has to kind of row together, and we're prepared to do our bit. And I think every other team owner is on the same page.
We have all three of us, well, everybody has lived with this notion in professional sports. Hell, generally speaking, in amateur sports, that you have a regular season and then you have some kind of a playoff format to determine a champion. And I've often wondered whether we ought to start thinking outside that box, and wondering whether the notion of a regular season is really the hard part. Because when you get down to it, Eugene, a 7-game playoff series is far less problematic. There's far less travel involved. You get quantity of games that you need, and you avoid all the complications that a regular season brings, and the extraordinary effort to make it equitable. And you've already talked about how it might not be equitable with the Canadian teams all playing well, albeit they haven't won a Stanley Cup since what, 93?
93.
Yeah. So, I mean, how far outside the box is the thinking going inside the NHL? Is it going that far? I doubt it.
You'd be surprised. You'd think that, right? That they kind of sit there and these are grinders. These people they have 100 options in front of them, and they pick and choose what they think would work, keeping in mind that there's like 31 unique teams. And as I said, some of us have exactly the same issues. I think you could differentiate between the very rich teams, the middle teams, and the poorer teams, or smaller market teams. But you have you've got to weigh that out. Then you've got other interests with the players. You have other interests with the union. You have television to consider as well.
Mm-hmm.
All the sponsors as well. So think of all of that keeps rolling. I mean, I could keep going and going and going. Commitments that are made to various sponsors. I bet you, I don't, but some stadiums, not necessarily NHL, but some stadiums, they have a minimum amount of days that they have to have that stadium filled.
Mm-hmm.
You follow me? Like minimum attendance.
Yeah.
I kind of remember we were negotiating at one point with the city of Ottawa, or wasn't maybe being the city, where they were going to contribute something to the transit, but we would then guarantee that we'd have so many people coming on transit, and think of that outside the box. As far as what you're saying of having a different format of regular season than playoff, I think they've looked at everything possible. Look at what they came up with, this hybrid for last year.
Yeah.
They figured it out. Was it perfect? No, it wasn't perfect, but was it great? It ended up being okay. There's a lot of issues out there that have to be resolved, and I think they are thinking out of the box. They do a good job that way. Surprisingly, a lot of people think they're very square. They actually go out there and throw everything up on a wall and say, you know what
works.
Well, I know you can't get into specifics, but if for the sake of argument, a 56-game schedule, and then some sort of playoffs. I mean, it's realistic. If there's no fans allowed, you may still go back to bubbles for playoffs.
John, let me ask this question. I was just going to ask something similar. Are they talking, Eugene, about bubbles or pods for a regular season where there are a certain number of locations, teams go in there for 2 weeks and then come out of there?
I can't tell you specifically, but I saw that in the media, and I thought, you know what, that is a possibility. I'm just, from my perspective, I'm saying you could go. It is one of the options. You go to a bubble for a couple of weeks. You get out of the bubble. It doesn't. Mm-hmm. It doesn't. It's not like the bubble they had Edmonton, Toronto. Okay, so it's not the same. In those bubbles, you went in, you didn't get out.
Right. Exactly.
But in this case, you got to be able to go out. And it's not perfect, but I think none of this stuff is perfect. Eventually, all it is you're bringing down the number of risks.
Correct.
Right.
That's all. I think that's the best you can do. Same thing with my idea for for the instant testing. I have a whole idea that takes it from an instant test. I'm talking about a 30-minute result, but you'd still have to do it in the morning because of the way these cultures and stuff work in vaccines. It gets complicated. But I thought to myself, then you get your result sent right to your phone.
Right.
They did this in Edmonton. Apparently, I wasn't there, but green is go, red is no, right? And I would put it on a lanyard, and I would walk around I envision a place where you actually walk around. If you go into a restaurant, you will have on your chest or somewhere your current status, which is whatever it is. It could be that, hey, I've been tested in the last 24 hours, I'm negative. Well, it doesn't mean that somebody didn't sneeze on you.
Well, no, it's imperfect, but everything is imperfect.
Right. So they're kind of philosophical, but at the end, you know what? It comes down to wanting any kind of spectator event, whether it's hockey, sport, the arts, right? Any of it. I mean, there's no gatherings, and everybody wants to start gathering again. And I think that's the only way you're going to be able to do it. I think if you have testing, I think if you have masks and distancing, I think you've cut down the odds of contracting COVID by, I'd say, 90+%. I really do. You don't have to, everybody's got a green on there, plus you got a mask, plus you're 6 feet from me. Mm-hmm. That's why I'm wondering how these people are all getting it. I mean, you got to really be in somebody's face almost. Literally.
Well, but I think what we know anecdotally, if nothing else, and I mean, it's more than anecdotal. There are people out there, unfortunately, who do not take this seriously, who believe that they are immune. I think a significant percentage of them are younger. We'll all recall at the beginning of this pandemic, it was primarily people, to be frank, of our age that were at highest risk. And the young people, after a certain period of sitting around their house, have basically said, well, right, I'm not going to get it. I'm going to be safe. My friends are safe. And the next thing you know, you got 50 people in a backyard or in a house having a party. And
hey, Bob, did you see the Notre Dame? Did you see the Notre Dame crowd go on the field after they beat Clemson?
Well,
that was
perfect example.
15,000 people.
Perfect example.
Between the ages of 18 and 22.
Yeah, I know. Look, I got daughters that are going to universities now, and they've actually, because they know that their dad is sensitive and he can't get it, and they were laughed at. They said, don't worry about it. Come on, party.
Exactly.
Like one's a freshman, the other one's a senior. The freshman, the poor girl, it's her first year. She's looking for friends and stuff. Everyone wants to go out and party. And the mayor of that city isn't doing a damn thing about it. These kids are all partying out. And guess what? To here, all of a sudden everybody's starting to get it, and that's all hell breaks loose. Anyways, now you're depressing.
Hey, can I ask? Can I ask about your hockey team? How good do you think you can be?
I think this coming year we will be competitive. We're still trying to grow. We've got a lot of young players, and there's no sense in rushing them. And you guys can tell me examples of teams that have rushed players, and the next thing you know is they've never fully developed, right? They play out, they get, what are you going to do? You're going to take a kid that's 20 years old, 21. He could be a star. You're going to put him up against Crosby? Really? Is that what you want to do? That's how you're going to develop them? Or are you going to put them on the third line playing 8 minutes? You know what I'm saying? So we are in that mode of still developing, yet the mandate is we want to be a competitive playoff team. And that's not easy to do. I think DJ Smith, the coach, knows, what he has to try to get done. Certainly Pierre does. Pierre Dorian, the general manager, does. I think everybody's on the same page to try to get there to be competitive. I think our fans would really enjoy to see us in the playoffs this year. And then once you get into the playoffs, we all say, then anything can happen, as we've seen before too. I think our big years are coming in the next 3 years. As these teams, our average age, we had to acquire 3 older players, some real tough grit guys, some real fighters, tough guys that, you better not mess with them, but they're there to protect the younger ones as the younger ones grow. And, I can just, I'm really excited to see the young ones starting to play up. And they're being mentored. Everybody's in that mode of let's mentor. We're building for something. We're focused on a plan that we win a Stanley Cup. That's the long game. And that's the long game I'm playing. I committed to playing that game 2 years ago.
Right.
And, I think it's, I think history, I hope, will show that this was a plan that was put together that has never been done before. Nobody's ever trashed a team like we have. Like, I took out our top 6 guys. Like, do that to any team and see what happens to them, right? But, I think I think the 6 words that a GM never wants to hear is we are going to rebuild. We are going to rebuild this team. 7 words.
7.
You don't want to hear that. Because, and they won't tell you that, because effectively what you're saying is, the past 5 years, I know I spent $500 million of your money to try to win the Stanley Cup, and I failed. That's what it is, $500 million out the window, and you didn't get there. Here, it's now what you're saying is, okay, forget about the past. What do we do to get there? And this was the plan that me and Pierre put together. And I think that at the end, he's done a great job executing it. And we got all those picks. We knew that this was going to be a big year. There's another big year, I think, that's coming up soon that we think is going to be just as good as this year. And all the pieces are in place now. We're just waiting for everybody like hurry up and grow.
Yeah.
And to add, so I think I answered your question. I think we're going to be competitive this year. Exciting, and I think you're going to see history in front of you with how this is actually executed. I hope I'm right. I really hope.
But the challenge will be something that I think a lot of your fans think they've seen before, not necessarily, is how do you keep these guys long term? You're not in the biggest market. You're not in the most financially aggressive market.
Yeah.
So how do you keep Thomas Chabot long term?
Yeah, I know. It's the way you do it is you reconcile in your own head that you're going to spend to win a Stanley Cup. Personally. So this for me is not my business. This is not it's a business, but I don't need this as a business. I have 100 other things I'm doing that make money. But I guess what you do is you reconcile the fact that you're going to spend to win. And you don't have to go crazy. You really don't have to go crazy. I don't think we actually, because I've seen the next 5 years, the outlook on spend, and it's never crazy. And we always have in our back pocket ammo that when you need it, it's there at trade deadlines. Because you can really push, it's just enough of a push over that can get you there. And I think everybody thinks that way.
You expressed some concern earlier about playing in a Canadian division with the quality of the other teams in the league. But here's what we've taken so far out of this pandemic, Eugene, and that is that if you look at the results of the past few months in the NBA, the NHL, and Major League Baseball, there were no dramatic upsets. In spite of the fact that things were not normal, in spite of the fact of shortened seasons and extended playoffs and bubbles and all the things that happened, look at the champions. The champions did not come from some other group that was unexpected.
They were the top seeds.
Presumed to be good. So if your team is good, you have to think that almost regardless of the circumstances of getting to a championship, you should be able to do it.
Pandemic, I don't think is an excuse to be good or bad.
Sure,
I agree with you.
We hope so, anyway.
See, I would have argued in the short term, Eugene. I want to play in a Canadian division because if you look at your TV ratings, even locally, if you play another Canadian team, your numbers are up.
Yeah,
So
no.
And you're going to play against, you said it, really good teams. And that's what your team needs to play right now.
You know what? Exactly.
And so I would say I want it for the short term, for this 1 year, I want to play in that Canadian division.
Yeah. John, I'm telling you, there is upside to it. I'm saying from the results point of view, it's going to be tough. But, it was pointed out to me very clearly. They said, yeah, but you know what? And I remember this from when I used to play tennis. You always want to play against better players. You do.
Sure
you do.
You want to put Josh Norris up against Sidney Crosby. 15-year veteran that's taken sticks to the head 25. It's too tough, I think. But I think in this case where you have a Canadian division, you're every night going to be playing against tougher teams, but you do want to win. So if your objective is to be a playoff team this year, you may have chosen the wrong division to play in. But for the development, as long as our fans understand it, I get it, that, hey, this is actually a good thing. We're playing these young kids against some real tough hombres, and, they're getting to learn by fire. I think it's a good thing for any developing athlete. You always want to be up against tougher competition.
It's always great to chat with you. It's really nice to see you, even though it's not, we're not flesh and blood. We're not sitting next to each other at the
TP. You should be at the TP now.
Well, I was about to say something in that regard, but I thought better of it. But it's wonderful to see you, and you appear healthy and reasonably happy, all things considered.
Sorry about the depression thing about talking about the vaccine, though. It's
well, we asked,
I'm the only guy that seems to be sitting there, saying, "Hey, this is the harsh reality. I'm in the business. I kind of know my stuff."
We know you do. That's why we asked.
Hey, before we go, two names came up: Alex Trebek and Tim Stutzel.
Yes.
So your thoughts on, first of all, how's Tim going to be? Is he going to be okay for when the season starts?
He's already skating. He's skating around. It was if you were going to get an injury, A, it was a good time to do it. And B, it was one of these injuries that's a very predictable type of, so Tim's going to be fine. Okay.
And then Alex Trebek.
Yeah, you know what? That was so sad. It was. I was shocked. I was just sitting around here, and I get a call from a friend and said, "Did you hear Alex Trebek died?" We all kind of knew he had stage 4 pancreatic cancer, and I thought he had a year, maybe 6 months, a year. But look, this came off great. I think that for a draft, we got everybody kind of excited. And I think that there's a lot of stuff we're going to do. You're going to see, I got a whole new marketing group that I brought in, like new senior management I've brought into the Sens. We're brainstorming some great ideas to promo us. And now's the time for us. I think you're going to see a very big new type of attitude and rising within the organization that is going to make everybody proud. And we're hoping to make all Canadians proud. And frankly, I hope we're the ones that do win a Stanley Cup in the coming years for Canada.
And you brought the old logo back.
Here it is.
There you go.
We brought the old logo back. We've made a few little a little tiny. You can barely notice them, but I think the home uniform is now black, which is going to look deadly. I'm telling you, it looks pretty intimidating, and we're looking forward to hopefully having people coming into our building and enjoying it, including you guys. So.
Well, we'd love to, that. We'll see how things go. It has been quite a while since we've had a chance to chat. As you know, we don't have the same platform that we used to have. But we're thrilled that you're with us this morning, and we wish you nothing but good health and the best of luck, and we'll bug you down the road, okay?
No problem. I really appreciate your interest in the club and myself, and hopefully we do see you soon in our favorite places.
Good health, Eugene. Good health.
We'd love that. The owner of the Ottawa Senators, EUGENE Melnyk, this time on the podcast. We'll see you in a couple of weeks.